Hello again, sir. Today, for my trade assignment, I have chose the G20. I personally believe it is the most important out of all the organizations. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, to start off with some background information. The G20 contains 20 members, 19 of which are countries and in the European Union. It includes countries such as Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, and United Kingdom, United States, and finally, the European Union. Now, the G20 itself, it's an international forum for central banks, governors, and governments themselves from 19 countries in the European Union. So, we are focusing on the G20. There's also a G8, some call G7 with Russia. And the main difference between the two is the G8 is more political, which is like in the 1970s when the world was facing economic difficulties and oil shock just happened. The group performed 15th of November 1975. Now, the G20 is more money-minded. It's just about money, the finances, and the 20 members collectively make up 85% of global economic output. The countries in the European Union also make up about 3/4 of the world population, which is 22 countries. In the beginning, were in their first meeting in 1998. And the G20 was finally created in 1999, September 26th, in Berlin, Germany. Now, moving on to its purpose. To begin, it is not an organization. It is an informal formal, which basically means they cannot directly adopt any laws, so instead they are catalysts for new initiatives. Now, in 2008, financial ministers and central bank chairmen met up. Because there was a recession that year, the Great Recession of 2008, those in the highest positions who did decide the meeting, eventually through the meeting, got more political power. Now, the main goal of the G20 is basically, as it says, fight global crisis, mainly economic ones. And with their increased political power, they can have more freedom when discussing and deciding on their decisions. Now, basically, it's system, and in ethics, you'll find out why in a little bit, why I wrote that. Now, in the run-up to summits, emissaries of head governments, known as Sherpas, worked on key issues. They do this together with different groups such as trade unions, scientists, and women's group. Now, the G20 already achieved a lot, such as applying tougher measures, which have been adopted to safeguard states and taxpayers from financial charges. Financial support has been agreed on for poorer countries, third world ones that are not as fortunate. They also agreed to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. Now, after the summits, however, each country is itself responsible for implementing these resolutions and enacting legalization, basically. Now, repeated criticisms have been directed against the G20, but that is like an elite club for undemocratic, because about what the voices from the world's other nations. That G20 members all support a policy based on economic growth and maximizing profit. Now, let's start with Canada's contribution. So the G20 every year, they meet up annually in a city of one of the 20 members countries. Now, in 2020, it was in Saudi. This year is going to be in Italy. And last time Canada had it was in 2010. So now, Canada basically plays the ethical role in this. As said, the G20 is money-based. With new laws coming in, it's very important to be ethical. Now, finance, Canada controls the ethical part. There was actually a law created to satisfy both areas. On the 12th of December 2015, climate negotiators sealed the Paris Agreement, aiming to reverse the trend of temperature rises mainly caused by carbon emissions. In 2016, a presidency statement was finally released at the G20 Sherpa meeting in Zhengzhou, China, promoting the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And when China finally signed the pact, giving a huge boost for the international efforts against global warming, it seems that a lot of their ambitions are becoming slowly a successful idea. This also helps Canada a lot. In 2019, there was a Japanese presidency as well. and Canada will continue to play a leadership role in ensuring that the G20 remains an active forum for climate action. Now, the Climate Sustainability Working Group, or CSWG is an acronym, this year actually anticipated to contribute to the first ever G20 joint ministerial on energy transitions and global environment for sustainable growth. Canada controlling the ethical sector will obviously play a huge part in this. Some more Canadian contributions include how we care about COVID. Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau played a major role in solving economic struggles regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. He highlighted the importance of leadership and that everybody needs to respect and defend human rights in order to attain a better path towards, he states, peace, prosperity, and sustainability. He advocated for the equitable access to vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics, as he can't reaffirm Canada's support and contributions to initiatives like COVAX and multilateral institutions such as WHO, which is the World Health Organization. And those are obviously essential to fight against COVID-19. Now, during the summit, the Prime Minister noted the importance of putting people at the heart of recovery efforts, from creating new jobs to building economic growth that benefits all citizens around the world. He said we must work to rebuild societies that are safer, fairer, and more resilient. As we work towards recovering from the virus, we need to prioritize support for marginalized groups, empower women and youth, and continue to respect fundamental democratic principles, including freedom of the press. Overall, he's being very clear and ambitious with his goals. He's also being very transparent. He raised the importance of predictable, inclusive, sustainable, and transparent rules-based trade to the global economy recovery efforts. Now, moving on to the challenges they face. This is a little subjective, but it means a lot in the, let's say, presidential world. Now, I personally think that the country's ruler, in this case Prime Minister Trudeau, is who fully represents a country. So if somebody represents a country, and even if the country is doing not as good economically, as long as the representative is good, the country is in a better state. Now, although usually Trudeau is calm and well collected in situations like this in front of camera, he makes himself sometimes seem unprofessional. He's considered to be less powerful than he actually is to many people. A good example of this would be this awkward interaction with the president of Brazil, where he tried to get his attention twice, then physically and gently tapped him, to which he was ignored. So Mr. Trudeau waited for him to turn around, then shook hands, and Brazil's president left first. This is a clear example of how weak Mr. Trudeau makes himself appear, even though that is a false narrative. Another issue would be Canada's mental health of the public issue. Now, I'm currently in United Arab Emirates. Recently, I was in Iraq, and even during my short time outside of Canada, I realized that the public mental health, not only on websites and on paper, is terrible. It's reality. Due to the way Canada is dealing with COVID, the economy stays slower than usual, especially in major cities such as Toronto or Vancouver, which indirectly causes medical professionals to be more critical, selective when helping people recover from COVID. Lockdowns continues, people stay bored, some lose their minds to a certain degree. So Canada really needs to overcome this issue, as the future does not look bright. If people stay antisocial, if people stay in this extreme boredom with this economy and education being more demanding, it doesn't look like a bright future. Changes need to be made. The plus side, however, is that the Prime Minister and honestly the government of Canada recognize this issue and is working on resolving it with the other G20 and G8 members. Now, this last challenge, this is very subjective and controversial because there's not a lot of proof regarding this. However, it is, I believe it is worth adding in here. And it's basically Canada's acceptance of Saudi Arabia's possible cover-up of the Jamal Khashoggi situation. Now, a small background information, the main Saudi prince, Mohammed bin Salman, was rumored to have killed Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the situation indirectly. On the 2nd of October 2018, Khashoggi, a Saudi dissenting journalist, columnist, not communist, columnist for the Washington Post, formerly editor actually of Al Watan, and former general manager and editor-in-chief of Arab News Channel. Very, very well-known figure, was actually assassinated by agents of the Saudi government at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. Now, some politicians and government officials suspect that his generous contribution to the country towards Canada and other major countries, generally the members of G7 and Russia, is to be a cover-up for certain situations that have happened and have been discovered, and of future situations as well. Now, Canada's government, not just Justin Trudeau, the whole government must stay aware of who they deal with and also make sure that their main business partners, USA, have a mutual understanding and agreement when representing other countries. Luckily, a Canadian director named Fadia Dief, I can't pronounce it properly, it is Fadia Dief, made a whole article on Human Rights Watch's website and calls this action from Saudi, like the prince and the government, they call it image laundering. She states, Prime Minister Trudeau should be enraged that Saudi Arabia is targeting Saudis who had hoped to find a safe haven in Canada through digital espionage and an alleged extrajudicial killing attempt on Canadian soil. He should demand answers from the Saudi authorities on these cases, turning a blind eye to the continued lack of transparency and accountability for Khashoggi's violent murder at the G20 would also fly in the face of Canada's effort to promote media freedom globally. She then states, Prime Minister Trudeau should use the G20 summit as a platform to call for the release of all Saudis languishing in prison merely for exercising their right to freedom of expression and for their peaceful human rights work, including Raif Badawi and Loujain El Halathu, who both of whom have strong ties to Canada. She states they deserve nothing less from the Prime Minister himself. Now, I fully agree with the first part in particular, but not fully with the second statement, as G20 is a money-based platform, and at the end of the day, so being ethical is the way to make money and manage it, but cannot be at the cost of breaking a relationship with Saudi or USA. It's too risky and not worth doing, coming from Prime Minister Trudeau's perspective. And the irony of it, another issue could be that some people would look at it as, hey, Canada and G20 itself, they're involving themselves in things they don't need to be involved in. So there's a double standard to it. There's two perspectives to it. But as long as there isn't a clear, path, there is an issue. So to wrap everything up, Canada and the G20 have a lot of participation in global economies. They play a big part. Canada's issues tend to be more